Often portrayed as barbaric, terrorists, war initiators, and oil sheikhs, Arabs are still being misrepresented again and again by the US media. My name is Khulud Ibrahim, and I'm an English major. This semester, I'm taking an APA class which discusses counter narratives about American history and how the Asian American culture term began in the US. It also discusses the term race and how it's only used to determine who gets what. The class connects with the dilemma Arabs have been and are still facing till this day. I'd like to introduce my Yemeni friend Siham Hassan, that has in fact been affected by the war in Yemen and how the US media representation of the war made it more difficult for them.
Hi everyone. Thank you for inviting me to your podcast. My name is Sihan, and I am English and political science major. I'm minoring in Arabic studies, and I'm very excited to discuss this topic. It's been always intriguing for me.
News headlines matter, so if New York Times chooses to present the Israeli occupation of Palestine and their terrorism with terms like conflict and debate, then it will never reach the general public. You would be surprised at the amount of people that have no idea about the ongoing events in occupied Palestine. As of January 28, 2023, the New York Times headlines about the Israeli attack on Jerusalem on innocent civilians was, quote unquote, 2 Israelis injured in Jerusalem attack hours after a nearby mass shooting.
Well, I think that social media is very large representation in general. And oftentimes, having social media portraying things in a certain way does really affect, I would say, a lot of minority communities and people of color, especially. Um, the conflict in Palestine and with the Israeli forces has been long-lasting conflict that social media always depicting very specific. And this is actually something that we talked about in class. I think that social media often use like they actually use words and terms that would, if not make, they would either make the two sides of the conflict as if they're equally empowered, which we know that it's not the case because Israel, they are aided, like they have so much aid that goes to them. And like Palestinians, a lot of them are actually they end up protecting themselves with rocks. And when it's that case, social media would say something like rebel or terrorist or things like that, and which I think it's very unfair because comparing to what Israelis have, it's really not that balanced of a conflict, if you know what I mean.
Like, I won't even discuss how the United States provide Israel with weapons. Therefore, it should come as no surprise that Israeli narratives are given greater prominence than the Palestinian story. In the article I told you about, the headline was 2 Israelis injured in Jerusalem. It said a 13-year-old boy terrorist shot and killed 2 Israelis. That is crazy. But Sam, let me ask you a question. How does it make you feel, or what image comes to your mind when you read this passage in an article? It says, the state of Israel is the Jews' rightful home, promised to them by God and sanctioned by legal and political processes. Its existence, seen always in the shadow of the Holocaust, guarantees that such horror will never be repeated. For now, the Jewish nation has a recognized state. Yet, Jews are still suffering unremitting attacks from anti-Semites globally and locally from Palestinian terrorists.
So if you've noticed, the two words that they begin the statement with and ended the statement with is terrorists. That's like the two main words that they intentionally and deliberately made sure that they begin the sentence with and end it with. And oftentimes things like this are used to shift the focus. So it's in a way they're saying they're justified, and they justify it by using terms like this. But I think not only do they, it's, do they depict Palestinians in a very, like the savage, the terrorist, the retarded, and like just uncivil in general, but
Mm-hmm.
also I think with statements like this does underestimate the rights that Palestinians have, not
Mm-hmm.
only as citizens but also historically, because we all know that Palestinians were there before, and I think statements like this try to underestimate their existence and just try to, ethnic cleanse them basically.
Yeah. I also mentioned before that the war in Yemen affected you in the way the US has interfered in the civil war, made things worse for the war in Yemen. Can you please elaborate on that and tell us exactly how it led to that?
Yeah, sure. You mean social media? How does social media portray the conflict in Yemen?
How the US interference affected it
Mm,
when it had no relations to a civil war happening in Yemen, and how they represented it in media.
right. I think the conflict in Yemen. So, for anyone who doesn't know, Yemen is dealing with a civil war currently, and it's been going on since 2015. At first, it was, you know, two groups within who are, trying to withdraw the like the main government or the president, but then he wouldn't basically let the other president become a president. So they decided that they want to withdraw him. But the problem was that the United States became actually involved because Yemen have a lot of oil resources. It's also located in a very 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 important location, like globally, specifically in Aden, which there is like the largest sea there, so that trade usually go through that. So actually, Saudi Arabia there is also got involved, and the United States too, and because Iran is actually aiding these groups, I think it's important to acknowledge the involvement of the U.S. But what we see is that often the social media just gaslight the conflict between Saudis and Yemenis and does not acknowledge actually like the involvement of the U.S. And I just don't think that this is just with Yemen. I think a lot of times we see that the U.S. is actually involved politically in something, but it's never represented, and that they focus on other aspects and other sides of the conflict,
Mm-hmm.
which only leads to like more gaslighting, more causing you know problems within civilians actually.
Right. I think the stereotyping of Arabs has been going on for long enough and continues to affect us and innocent generations. And although there has been a massive difference between media representation years ago and now, we will still fight for the truth until the world knows the narrative that they should know. But thank you so much, Sam, for contributing.
You're welcome. I think it's very important that we start just as individuals acknowledging that
Mm-hmm.
social media is biased, that social media is important, and we take things to our hands and to actually critique and challenge social media and not take it as it is.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.